So now we can jump right into introductions. So first I will start with our president, Dana L. Collins. She is a licensed counseling psychologist and works for We Care Brooklyn. She received her BA in psychology from Spelman College, her MS in counseling and counselor education from Indiana University, and her PhD in counseling psychology from Boston College. So our next panelist is Rod Hurley, an NYABPsi graduate student member, and also a doctoral student in critical and social personality psychology at the CUNY Graduate Center. So our next panelist is Mary Morris, an NYABPsi graduate student member as well, also a drama therapist and recent graduate of NYU's Masters of Arts in Drama Therapy program. And she has her BFA in theater arts acting. So that's another thing about her. And lastly, we have Lisa Whitten, PhD, a past president of NYABPsi, as well as a current NYABPsi board member. And she also is an associate professor with the psychology department at SUNY Old Westbury. So we have a bunch of questions that were submitted by participants. But before we get into the discussion and discourse, we just want to make sure that participants are mindful of the length of their responses, just so in the interest of time, all participants and guests have the chance to share and ask questions and engage. So we ask that we keep the responses to no more than 1 to 2 minutes in length. And also at the end of this question segment, we will also open the floor for questions from everyone here. Feel free to put the questions in the chat or use the functions, the reaction functions to indicate that you'd like to participate. So without further ado, we can begin. So our first question, and this is for all panelists, is what are the essential steps of the application process in terms of grad school?
I can start off. There are quite a lot of steps. I think one of the most important ones that people sometimes have difficulty with is deciding where to apply. There are a lot of options. And in my experience, mentoring and support was a really important part of my experience. So when I was looking for programs, I paid a lot of attention to what faculty were there and what kind of work they were doing, because the idea was that I wanted to work with people who would be able to support me and point me in the right direction in order to help me advance with my career. I also paid attention to the makeup of the students. It was really important for me that I not be the only Black person. So I looked for programs that had diversity in terms of race, gender, sexual orientation. I wanted to be with a diverse cohort in terms of my own development.
Thank you for that, Dana. Would any other panelists like to jump in? And
I can add something, sure. I would say, to add to what Dana said, that one of the first things I think is deciding what you want to do in grad school, because then that's going to determine, like, how you rate schools, how you are able to assess whether it's a place you want to be at or not. So what you want in terms of not only what kind of degree you're looking for, but what atmosphere you're looking for, and what are your priorities in doing grad school. Because people have very, very varied priorities. Some people are like, wherever I can get the money, wherever I can get the fun, I'm prepared to stick it out and do it. You know, for some people, the money or funding is a priority. For some people, going to an HBCU is a priority, and they're willing to make sacrifices to make that happen, and you know, even be in uncomfortable cohorts, but gain strength from the fact that they have that heritage of being at an HBCU. And for some people, it's you know, I want to do this particular type of research or something like that. So I think knowing what you want to do and what your priorities are for grad school, whether it's just, I want to get a degree to get a career, or I really want to get to a school that is going to be on a pathway to teaching, or whatever it may be. I think knowing what you want and trying to set out your priorities as early as possible is really, really key.
Thank you for that, Rod. I'm really glad that you mentioned HBCUs, because that's a question that will come up later during our discussion, but I'm glad you laid the groundwork for that. And also, you know, understanding, you know, your wants, exactly what you want out of the program, and making sure that it serves you and your needs. So moving on to the next question. So how do students start to build relationships with faculty in order to receive good letters of reference for applications?
Yes, and you know, I actually want to add that one of our audience members, Fabiola Cunningham, has asked this question in the context of attending courses 100% online, because the dynamic, the relational dynamics are very different, can be very different.
Well, I guess I'm the reasonable person to talk about that one as a faculty member for 34 years. And we have other faculty on the call as well who would be, who couldn't add to it. It is all about relationship building. So I'm glad that you use that word instead of just, how do I get good letters of reference? The idea is to build those relationships over time. And there are many ways to do that. On the call, I have a young lady that has taken several classes with me, and this semester she will be my teaching assistant. So sometimes there are opportunities to work with faculty like that. And this is going to be through an independent study. And because at my school, we don't have formal TAs, but I like to have a TA to assist me as I'm working, the way they assist faculty where they are formally set up. So you want to be creative and think about different projects and ways of interacting with faculty. One of the first ways is just to stop by the office. And if you're online, stop by the virtual office. There seems to be something very scary for many students about just stopping by and sort of chatting with me. And that's the best way to get to know your faculty and for them to get to know you. You want to share with them some of the things that Rod was talking about. What are your interests? What are you finding inspiration in? What are your dreams? So that you can, so that they can know what resources to direct you to, like summer research programs and other opportunities like that. You can be a research assistant to a faculty member. Just being in the classroom is one of the most important ways to build that relationship, and that involves being an active participant and not just sort of sitting back and listening, but really putting yourself out there so that when it comes time for the faculty member to write a letter, they can make reference to your participation and your involvement and that sort of thing. So it's a matter of reaching out and being assertive and practicing doing that if it's hard for you. Role playing it with a peer or an adult, an older person that you feel comfortable with. And those are some of the things that I would say by way of introduction to that topic.
I can add to that from the student perspective. I I think also it's important to know that like you don't have to show up to professors as the perfect student. I think that was something that I was intimidated about when trying to get mentors and trying to get recommendation letters for grad school. I was like, oh my God, I need to show up with my resume and my CV, and I need to show them that I'm this perfect little student and like I'm their dream candidate to write a recommendation letter for. But I think, as Lisa was speaking to, like just showing up as yourself, and like even if you're struggling with something in the topic in their class, like you want them to professors to be able to speak to your whole self, and so not just the strengths, but how you overcame troubles in their classroom, how you showed yourself to be resilient. And so like if you are struggling, don't sit back and be like, oh God, like this professor is gonna think I'm dumb, or like this professor is gonna hate me. Like meet with them one-on-one, like talk about your struggles, challenge the professor. Like if there's something you have a question about on their syllabus or you're not sure of, like don't be afraid to bring your whole self to the professor so that they can really be specific about you in their recommendation letters. Because when you're applying, schools will be able to see through like, oh, it seems like that student might have wrote that recommendation letter, or like, this one seems a little bit generic. Like they hit up that English 101 teacher from freshman year that gave them the A. So like really try to cultivate like detailed and intimate relationships, and don't be afraid to just bring your whole self.
Yes. Yes.
I don't have too much to add.
Occasions I've written about the fact that a student was able to accept criticism. And that's an important characteristic. So I think that point about not having to be perfect is really important, that if a professor sees that you're really working hard and you're dedicated and you know what it takes to be successful, that's important too. Sorry, Dana.
That's okay. Yeah, I just wanted to uplift what both you and Mary have said about being a real and a whole person, because when I've taught, the students who I got to know as people stood out the most. And I also really, I liked it when they seemed to want to have a relationship with me and wanted me to get to know them. So that goes a long way. And I think it can also take some of the pressure off because like Mary said, you don't have to be the perfect student all the time. And that, isn't always the most interesting thing.
Really awesome points all around. I really liked your point, Mary, about authenticity and making sure that you're creating that authentic human connection with your professors, so they can write you the best reference letter possible. And also to your point, Lisa, about role playing and practicing, to sort of navigate those relationships. It makes me think of our next question, which is about interviews and maybe how role playing and practicing can factor into that. So our next question is, how do you conduct yourself during a grad school interview?
I can talk so long ago that I don't think it's too relevant. I'm thinking about the fact that my interviews were literally 43 years ago, in 1977. But let's hear from the younger folks.
I can share. I think I'm the most recent person that applied. I think for me, it started before the actual entering into the room. And so for me, I sort of did research on who will be in the room for my interview. I think that was important, like getting to know them, what was their demeanor, what were their research interests, what would they be looking for in the student. I also practiced, and so I had my professors, I had people, I went to Howard for undergrad, and we had like an office of undergraduate studies, and I had folks from over there in the academic office like interviewing me, and I learned things like, I used to say and like a lot, I think I still do. And also learning to breathe. I think sometimes we're so pressed to get our points across, like I need to let them know that I do this, I need to let them know that I do that. And I was talking so fast, and they were like, we can't even keep up with what you're saying. And so I learned to practice to slow down. I learned to practice to make eye contact, getting to know if there's going to be multiple people in the room. So how do you engage everyone in the interview versus if you're just going to be talking to one person? Those are things that I wanted to know up front. And I also think having almost like a list of 10 different points or things that are important to you that you want to make sure that you incorporate in the interview. Because sometimes you anticipate what they're going to ask, and then they ask something completely different. And so if there are some key selling points that you know you want to incorporate about yourself, practice how you might loop those things from your CV, or practice how you might loop those research interests into different questions. And I think going back to what we talked about before, the authenticity piece, like being yourself in their interview, and also not being afraid to ask questions. I think we get to the end and they're like, all right, do you have any questions? And people are like, what type of questions should I be asking? Like, showing that you researched the program and that you care about it and you want to know that what you're investing in is very important to them. And I think that that should be shown in the interview. So those are a couple things.
I think Mary nailed it, but I can just add a couple of things as well. So my grad school interview was, what, 3 years ago now? And, or maybe a little bit more than that. But yeah, so I would just say, in addition to everything that Mary said, you really want to find something about your, I mean, you're always going to talk about your research interests and, you know, what you want to contribute to the program and to the world, and things like that are always going to be a part of it. But you want to find something as well that's going to make you stand out from the crowd, right? Because everybody's going to be talking about that. They're going to hear lots of stories about research interests and about how people got interested in psychology because this person and their family, they're going to hear a lot of that, and it's going to start to sound like the same thing after a while. So you really want to find a way that at the end of the day, when they've had their interviews, your interview stands out in some way, right? In some good way. And usually the best way to do that is to highlight something about yourself that's not academic, because that's where you're going to find the most uniqueness, right? Because lots of people are going to have good qualifications and everything too. But if you make crochet bikinis or whatever you do that makes you unique, right? Talk about that and talk about how that like brings joy to somebody's life, or if you play the flute, or talk about something that makes you human, right? That makes you a person that contributes like happiness to the world, and that will stand out to people a lot more than just your qualifications.
I think what I can contribute, even though it was so long ago, you need to know what kind of interview you'll be showing up for. When I was interviewed at the Derner Institute at Adelphi, we had just a group interview. There was no individual interview. And I think they're still doing that. And I know that some other programs also do group interviews. And so that preparation for that is really very different, and participating in it is very different. So you want to know what kind of interview, who will be interviewing you. Sometimes graduate students interview you as well as faculty. You want to know how many of those people, as much as you think you need to know to make yourself feel comfortable, and then be able to do some research on the internet about that type of interview and how you can prepare and put your best foot forward.
Lisa, I just wanted to come in here that one of my recent students told me that when she was given the interview, she didn't know who would be interviewing her. So she researched the different professors and their area of research.
Mm-hmm.
She also went on social media, so she was able to identify a name with a person, so that when she met the individuals, it was as though, okay, I know you, I know about your research. Read about the research and see whether this is an area that she wanted to get into. And things went well, so it's not all the time, as Lisa said, that you are told who will be interviewing you, that sometimes you don't. And with a group interview, it's important for you when you're doing a group interview to role play before. And it's important for you to either get in there the first, second, or third. Even if someone is talking, keep talking. So, you know, this thing about manners and respect, this is like your lifeline. So it's important for you to get in there and, you know, talk and present yourself. Okay. And
Why don't you introduce yourself so folks know who you are. Because one of the things, we want you all to know who we are so that you can stay in touch with us. And you might have other questions later, you know, and you can contact us and ask those.
I am Dr. Lashley. I'm a former past president of NYABPsi, former past president of the student circle, current chair of the student circle, and many of my students, and Rod can attest to this, who I've mentored along the way have been successful in graduate school. I'm happy to report that one of them received her doctorate in forensic psychology from John Jay last year, and she was given the full ride. I have another one whose dissertation committee I'm sitting on next semester, and she'll be graduating in clinical psychology as well. So I seem to have a fairly good track record, although I've had students who have crossed over to social work, but I've welcomed them back into psychology for their doctorate. Just saying.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lashley. And you bring up the point about JEGNAship. A big part of what NYABPsi does is JEGNAship or mentoring.
Thank you all who have just contributed so much to that one question. And now we're going to move into the next question, which is, what advice would you give someone who is thinking about applying to graduate school but isn't sure?
Okay, I can take this one first. I would say that if you're thinking about it and you're not sure, then you're probably, chances are you're not ready. That would be my guess, because it has to be something that you are committed to. It has to be something that you want to do. And, you know, if you're not ready, that's fine. Some people take lots of time in between. Some people work. Some people build connections and experience. But I think it's important to do it when you're ready. Because it will be so much harder if you go in from the beginning not ready, or if you go in from the beginning not sure if you're ready. The kinds of sacrifices that you're going to have to make, and just the kind of effort that you're going to have to put in is going to be so much harder to give if you're not committed to being there and to succeeding. So, yeah.
And I just wanted to say this semester is the semester for you to network with people who are in grad school already. This is the time to network with those peers who are taking the exams, who are getting ready to identify programs. Talk to them, network, so that when you have a pool of peers that you can study with, that you're able to move along with, and that helps you to decide, do I want to go now, or will I take a year off and decide what to do? So it's important for you to have that peer connection, have that professor connection, and also get support where you can from your peers and your mentors.
I would like to add that I think a person who's not quite sure, it provides an excellent opportunity to do some research and to really give some careful thought to what is it that you're not sure about. And you might want to, I'm a very visual person, so sometimes I like to see things posted up on a wall, and you could put the advantages of going to grad school and the disadvantages of going to grad school. One of the things to really pay attention to is the cost, you know, and are you able to find a way to finance your education, and how much more money can you anticipate earning? That's something that could be a real motivator, that you can really increase your earning potential, but you have to balance it with the amount of money that you have to spend just to earn the degree. So I would say do some research, talk to people, do some journaling to help you, you know, think through what's going on. And that'll help you to get to a point where you can be more certain and do what Rod is saying, approach it from a positive perspective.
Mm-hmm. I would also add to that, if you're on the fence or if you feel like you're not ready, as Lisa was saying, like dig underneath to figure out why, and then figure out if you can get support in that area. I think also when we're looking at the demographic of this call, we're looking at young Black folks who are trying to get master's degrees and trying to get PhDs. So sometimes a part of that is also imposter syndrome. And so also asking yourself, is there sort of this idea of like oh, I can't go to that big name school, or oh, I can't get that degree because people like me don't do that, or like I didn't get all A's on this. And so I think also talking to people who did this before you, so connecting with people who are on this panel, connecting with people who go to your current school, who graduated and moved on to a higher program, and seeing what they did and helping them process that with you, like no, you're more than enough, like you can go on and you can slay that degree. So giving yourself that own confidence. And also asking people questions and mentors so you can figure out the whole cost situation. Because for me, like I moved to New York, like had to find an apartment, had to figure out how I was gonna pay bills and also pay tuition. Like it was a whole new world, and I went straight from undergrad. So for me, I definitely, like if you would have asked me, was I ready to go to grad school, I would have said no. And so, but I also just got my degree this past year. And so clearly there was a part of me that was ready, but I just didn't know that I was ready. And so I think really tapping into mentors and Black folks who have paved the way and who have done this before you, so you can figure out how do you get a job and also balance, or if that's not possible, where are the scholarships at, where are the teaching assistant positions, where are the work studies and things like that. How do you process, how do you get a therapist to help you work through that imposter syndrome? How do you get help when you're struggling in the course, because grad school is no joke? How do you finesse the reading? Because realistically, nobody's doing 600 pages of reading a night. Like that's just not happening. So I think sort of, even if you're not necessarily 100% ready, how do you get ready enough?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Mary, you made a really excellent point about imposter syndrome, because even if we might not recognize that as what it is, a lot of us do have these doubts and these negative internalized ideas about what we can do, about how capable or intelligent we are. And that really needs to be addressed. And a really good way to address it, is you've said, and as other people have said, is by talking to people who have gone through it, and specifically around, did you ever have these thoughts or these concerns? How did you address them? Because you're not the only one who has. And hearing about how other people went through it can be really, really helpful. And it can also be really validating. So yes, and challenging those limiting beliefs is very important.
One of our past presidents, Richard Orbe Austin, and his wife, Lisa Orbe Austin, have just completed a publication. Well, it's been about a year, I think, and I'm putting the link to what they're calling a curated conversation on imposter syndrome on LinkedIn. I'm putting it in the chat box. And I also wanted you to know that I've done some writing about survival guilt and survival conflict. And when I was in graduate school, we formed a dissertation support group. That's something I wanted to be sure to put out there. And one of the things that people talked about was that they felt like some conflict about being the first one in their family to become a person with a doctoral degree, for example. And I've heard students talk a lot about thinking about why was I the one that got to go to college even and go to graduate school. And so I did some work on the impact of those kinds of feelings on students' GPAs, and those feelings do have an impact. So again, looking at these resources, I'm gonna find a way to link to my chapter, which is older than many of the people on the call, on the Zoom meeting. But I think it's still a useful chapter on survival guilt and survival conflict.
Yes, and thank you, Lisa, so much for bringing up Dr. Rich and Lisa Orbe Austin. The name of their book is Own Your Greatness. I think it actually came out this spring. I'm gonna put that in the chat as well.
Okay.
I just want
Can I
to
share something?
about, sorry. I just wanted to add one piece about being ready, right? Because kind of what Mary was saying, you have to like get to this point where Mary thought she wasn't ready, but you know, she actually was because she did it. And like, what is being ready? You will actually never get to the point where you're not afraid, never get to the point where it will be easy. You know, so being ready really comes down to me to be a decision that you make about being willing to put in and to work and to make the sacrifices and getting the support that you need to make that happen. So if you think you're not ready, maybe just make a decision to be ready.
Thank you all.
Who's that
For,
to get in before?
oh, I'm sorry. Keep going, Fabiola.
Good evening. Sorry I joined late. I had dinner. I have kids, so I balancing all of that. I really appreciate this Zoom meeting tonight. I recently applied for a doctoral program, and I really appreciate what's been shared, particularly by Mary. And I think the imposter syndrome is also added for me and my friends, is the issue of credentials, right? Do I need this degree? Do I need this debt it's gonna cost? Do I need like all the prep work that you all have been talking about that I need to do to kind of get ready to the degree where you can actually begin? But is this credential sufficient? And it's such a battle, because I think also, as we're talking about this, and we all, I believe, might be people of color, particularly of the African American diaspora, but that we might be the first in our families getting these degrees. That can feel very isolating, that our families don't understand how these additional degrees and credentials impact or influence the work we want to do. And being the only one in our families can feel like, you know, you're also part of this larger world that often in this academic setting is predominantly white. And I know there's a lot being done to change the face of that. Clearly the Zoom is the example of that. But also, what does it mean to have this degree and being the only one, the only brown, Black face in these often spaces of color? And how do one show up in those spaces, but also not lose ourselves? And does this credential make sense? Can I have a fulfilling career? Can I be creative in developing the career that I want with just a bachelor's degree or with just a master's degree? Do I need all three, a bachelor's, the master's, the doctorate? And also I think assessing, what does it give you? Is it going to give you more income, more sort of in terms of what it is that you want to do? So I think it's also part of the preparation is exploring also the us in that, but also the us in the context of white supremacy, the us in the context of white academia spaces, and kind of knowing that going in there and being possibly the only or a few of the brown and Black face in those spaces, and how do you sort of navigate those spaces? And if you're going to a HBCU for the graduate degree, even then, right, what's your area of expertise or specialization, and how does all of that fit? So those are the questions I've had to ponder about. And also I have kids, right? I'm already in the academic world. I teach. I'm a social worker by training, therapist by training, and thinking, do I need this additional degree to kind of push my career when I have 3 kids under 10, and all these other factors in life that's happening in the middle of COVID? And for me, the decision had to be with some of what I just mentioned, and what's been said is shifting my career where I have control over it. I think working in social service in the helping field can feel very disorienting, very burnt out, because the leaders often don't look like us. The people making the decisions for the people we are working to heal don't look like us. And I wanted to have power for me in taking that back to do the kind of work that I feel makes sense for me on a cultural level. That's all I wanted to share. Thank you. My 3-year-old might pop up on the screen because he does that all the time. So.
Thank you for that, because I think that you pointed to the fact that there are some questions that probably everybody should be asking themselves, but there are some questions that are specific to your particular situation that need to be asked too. You know, does it make sense in the context of the work I'm doing already, what I am already able to do? And the point about whether it will actually open more doors, that's a good one too. And I would suggest for that, continuing to talk to people, particularly people who are doing the things that you want to do.
And to that point, our next question sort of deals with these sort of questions that you have in your mind about, you know, the whole process. And thankfully you have an amazing panelist that has been through the whole process. So reflecting on your graduate school experiences, what are some challenges that you faced, and what are some challenges that you have observed students go through? And how did you overcome those challenges?
I think I can sort of tap into what Fabiola was talking about. I went to an HBCU for undergrad. I went to Howard, and then I transitioned into NYU. And while NYU is known as this sort of liberal, we woke, we pride ourselves on diversity, there's still a long way for them to go. And I think, particularly in my field as a creative arts therapist, it's created by white men and carried on by white women. And so we were known as to have the most diverse cohort, but it was really a culture shock for me. I was used to feeling confident in my Blackness. I was used to people getting it without explanation. I didn't have to explain myself. When something happened in the media, we didn't have to discuss it to let people know why this is inappropriate or why these microaggressions or macros sometimes are unacceptable. And so I think for me, picking and choosing my battles in the classroom, I think sometimes I spent so much energy trying to get everyone in my cohort on board of like why they need to be culturally competent and how to do it. And it's just like, that's not feasible. And you're going to be fighting professors too, because not all professors are going to get it. And so realizing like, when is it at the expense of your own mental health, and knowing like, when is it going to be your fight? And also finding outlets on campus. If your cohort is not giving you what you need, I joined a graduate fellowship for students of color. And that's where I found my people. Like, I honestly hardly hung out with my cohort other than studying and internships. The whole program, I was with other Black students, people who I felt like I could be myself around. I sought out Black mentors. Like, all the Black drama therapists I knew, I was in their faces like, hey, give me, like, feed me, like, how can we pour into each other? And so I think finding your community, if the cohort itself isn't it, or your professors aren't doing it for you.
To add to that, I would say, really, like, don't lose the other parts of yourself. Don't put all of yourself into your program. I mean, you have to be committed to it, but still remember that you need to do self-care. You need to, you know, still spend time with family and friends and that kind of thing. And I think that really helps to keep you sane, because if you put everything that you do into your grad school experience, it's simply not healthy, I find. And then you're trying to put everything into that, and then that begins to suffer because you're not well. So it's really important to just keep yourself in a good place and be able to take breaks away from the program, from your cohort, and to, you know, have conversations that are not about grad school sometimes, and just be able to relax that way as well. In addition to what Mary said. No, go ahead.
Sorry. I'd like to put in a plug for our organization. When I learned about the Association of Black Psychologists during my second year of graduate school, and we were offered the opportunity to travel there, we got some funding from the program at the Derner Institute to go to the National Convention of the Association of Black Psychologists. And that's been a huge source of support for me and made a tremendous contribution to my development as a woman, as a Black person, as an African descent person, and as a psychologist. Being in a room, I went to the University of Michigan and Adelphi. So they were both predominantly white institutions, and being in a room of 500 Black psychologists and psychology students just blew me away in the late 70s. And I've been to every convention every year since then, except one year when I was away, and this year when our convention wasn't held. So I just want to encourage you to attend a local event of ours, join the student circle as being part of a community, and try to attend the national convention if you can. And I put a link to a set of videos that the APA produced that has a lot of details about applying to graduate school and being successful. I wanted you to know about those.
All right, so thank you, Lisa, so much for that. And now I would like to open the floor for any sort of questions, comments from our participants here. So feel free to just jump in, and our panelists are here eager and ready to answer your questions.
I wanted to add something. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. I want to apologize for being late. My name is Robin, and I went to graduate school like Lisa many years ago. And in fact, my graduate school, I attended Yeshiva University, which is a predominantly Jewish institution, and it was very isolating. So just to build on what Mary said, it's important for you to find your support and your community where you are in order to make it, because it's one thing getting into graduate school, but it's another getting out of it in terms of graduation. And I'm always concerned about the retention rate, because I believe that there are many schools, because of numbers, they like to look good on paper, and they will accept many of us because they need the numbers, but they're not necessarily going to give us the support that we need. I found myself, when I needed my clinical supervision, I sought out Dr. Marjorie Hill, who's a predominant Black, very famous Black psychologist.
She was one of my classmates.
And I needed, yes, like Lisa, who is someone who I needed to feel like, okay, I could talk to this person. I'm working as an intern, but I'm feeling very isolated. Or when I go to school and I'm the only one that's not wearing a skirt and a hat, I feel very isolated. Or when the teachers look at me a certain way, I feel isolated. Like I said, it's very important for you to find your community. In regards to getting into graduate school, if you can narrow down what you see yourself doing, what you'd like to do, I think it will save you a world of stress in terms of the programs that you apply to. You could basically narrow down the type of programs you're going to apply to, and apply to if you can afford as many as you can, because you want to me, number one, cast a broad net. You want to interview in many different places, because you need to learn something about yourself based on every interview you go through. Because there's always something to learn from either the mistakes you made, or when you go on those group interviews, the group dynamics that occur, or even when it comes to individual interviews, making sure you're researching even the faculty and what they're studying. You don't want to be in left, necessarily in left field, and they're in the right field. I also had a good experience in terms of financing my graduate education, not only through student loans, but through scholarships. It's important. There's so much money out there, and I wouldn't sleep on it. If you do get into graduate school, definitely research what funding's out there, not only for us as women, but if you're a single mom, I think it's important for you to do that. With my student loan, I just also wanted to share that because we were consistent in paying our student loan, it made me eligible. My credit was good, so I was able to buy a house when I was ready. So, even though you're kind of like, well, I don't want to take out money and I don't want a student loan, but if you're consistent and responsible with different things, and student loans are investment in yourself and your education, it ultimately pays off. So those are a few little tidbits I wanted to share in regards to my experience. But it was important for me to find a community, a classmate I can connect to, and reaching out also to other community members like through ABSI.
Thank you. So do we have any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, everyone. Quick intro. My name is Shireen Bell. I'm from John Jay College, and I am in my final semester of the master's program in forensic psychology. And I am here because of Dr. Matthew Johnson, who is an associate professor at John Jay as well. And so thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be here. My question is regarding working and going to school, because my final semester, as I said, is this semester coming in the fall, and I'm excited to start working in my field. I'm excited to start making money. I'm excited to start doing things that I've been studying for so long. And one of the questions I have, my main concern is it even possible to attend a graduate program or classes full-time and hold a full-time job? Or what is the scheduling like for classes at that level?
I would say for a doctoral program, it's not advisable to have a full-time job, because the doctoral program can be like a full-time job. But maybe if it's another master's you're going for, it's maybe more doable, I think.
I think it also depends on the program. That with clinical programs, you really don't have that much free time on your hands. So that working, I know when I went to Howard, I worked on weekends, and that was at night, just to get extra money. But it was very difficult to try to hold down a job and to attend graduate school, particularly in clinical.
Yes. So it's been mentioned, every program is different. In general, when you're doing a doctoral program, it's very, very difficult to work full time. In my program, Boston College, we were discouraged from working at all. Some people, myself included, worked part-time here and there, but the financial need is real. And what my program and other programs did to help offset some of the costs was offer us assistantships. So our first 3 years were fully covered by teaching assistantships, research assistantships. So sometimes it's possible to find employment or different opportunities on campus. And the nice thing about that is that they're often related to what you want to do. They're right there on campus, so you don't have to spend time traveling, although that's less of an issue now with COVID. But I would suggest that if you need to work, finding something that's either built in or closely related.
Yeah, and I just want to say that one of my mentors, who is a neuropsychologist, that sometimes when she got referrals, she would give it to us and let us go in and do the assessment, write it up, and she would check it because it has to be hers. And then she would give us like 3/4, whatever she was getting, and she would take the other quarter. So that was one way of helping us in terms of finances.
I just want to put in a plug right here for NYABPsi again, because I joined NYABPsi when I was an undergraduate at Medgar Evers College, and it really changed my entire experience. And like Lisa said, as a student member of NYABPsi, I was able to apply for a scholarship, and I got that scholarship as well, that allowed me to go to my first national convention in Orlando, I believe it was. No, this was in Oakland. First one was in Oakland, and it changed my life. I was blown away. I made so many connections. I know people say it changed my life, but this one actually did. I made so many connections and gained so much knowledge and insight, and just went back to school for my second year in the doctoral program as a completely new person, and felt so inspired and encouraged from that experience. And then I went back again last year when it was in Orlando and had another beautiful experience. And I plan to go every year as well. So please join our organization. I put the link to join NYABPsi in the chat. You can also join the National Association as well. Student membership is very, very reasonable, $20 to join. And that's for an entire year. And the connections that you make are so invaluable. I want to shout out also my mentor, Dr. Lashley, who in my time at Medgar-Evers College was one of the people that really my confidence, my ability to really go out there and network and showed me so much about just being a good student, you know. And I know some of you might be Dr. Lashley students, and Dr. Lashley can be a hard taskmaster sometimes. I'll put it that way. She can be a hard taskmaster, but she's one of the people that really cares about her students. And if a professor like that to connect with, it really makes the entire experience completely different. And quickly also shout out to Dr. Jones, who also mentored me at Medgar-Evers College, and just having good mentors and people who can say, I've been through that, don't go that way, makes an entire world of difference.
I just want to thank Rod, and I'd like to welcome Brandy Green, who is our current member of our Medgar-Evers ABPsi. Yes, I'm a hard taskmaster because I need to see more people that look like me in graduate school, not anyone who's going to BS along the way. So that, yeah, I try to keep Rod on track, and he made me proud. What can I say?
Dr. Lashley, keeping it real.
I guess I just want to add one other thing about the importance of really honing your writing skills. When I was in graduate school, I was assigned to work with one of my a classmate a couple years behind me, just to help him build his skills, because it's impressive to me how far along people can go and get good grades, but their writing skills still, there's a lot of slippage there. And my students complain so much about me correcting their grammar and so on, but it's important when you send in your letters of reference, not your letters of reference, but your personal statement, and any examples of publications you might have gotten, which you should try to do, that they're damn near perfect. Because if not, you know, there can be those people who will trash you just over the simplest mistake. And I don't believe in perfection. That's why I said almost perfect. So just, you know, the writing skills, and if you need help with that too, go to the Writing Center, get some books, go to your professors to have them review your work before you submit it, and that sort of thing.
All right, so for the sake of time.
Can I just add one more thing, please? Please,
Sure.
just one last thing.
Absolutely.
I really want to shout out Khalif. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Khalif, I just want to shout you out personally because, like, you see how this Zoom meeting looks right now, bro?
Mm-hmm.
How it's just.
I see it.
You see it? This is the way my classes looked basically all through undergrad, especially in psychology. It's like, I'm the only man in the class. Mm-hmm. And you know, it's important to connect with other Black men in psychology. That's really important. And you can find that mentorship in NYABPsi as well. It gets worse when you get to grad school. You'll be the only man, you'll be the only Black man, you will be the only, you know, you get to be more of a minority, especially as a Black male like you and I. So I just want to personally extend an invitation to you to reach out to me so we can connect and to join our organization. But just know that we need more people like us, and our sisters definitely give us great support, but we need to support each other as well.
And I just needed to add that for those who are in graduate school and are doing research, that I would encourage you to keep that door open for undergraduates who can also assist with doing research so they can get their names on a publication, and it makes them more attractive when it's time to go into graduate school. Even if it's knowing how to code data, you know, how to do a lit review and get your name on the publication, it's helpful.
It seems like this is another one of our presentations that we need to have a part 2.
It seems like it, yeah, definitely. There's so much to add, but I just want to thank you all for all of your insights, all of your contributions. You know, this event was amazing, and we couldn't have, you know, had all of this without your participation. So we really appreciate it. And, you know, as someone who is, you know, just starting this process, I really appreciated and valued all of this. So again, thank you for your time. Definitely check our website, look, find us on social media, and you know, we're gonna have more of these events. So definitely stay tuned, and we thank you all for being here.
And thank you for your able mentoring, Liana.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, moderating is the word I wanted.
Thank you so much.
Moderating.
Right.
So,
Everyone.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Definitely need a part 2.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay.
It's great to come together.
Okay.
Okay. All right. I think it's just us now. Great job, everybody.
Yeah, that was really good.
I'm glad I was able to make it. I had one hell of a day, but I'm glad I was able to make it.
Yeah, we are too.
Liana, can you, I'm sorry, stop the recording because, and I always forget this part. Yeah.